Okay, good afternoon. We're going to be looking at the information on health and healing in relation to yoga practice. This is something it's important to me. I've been involved in the alternative health and natural health field most of my life, most of my adult life. And I find that health and physical health are very important for happiness, for spiritual practice, and too often people either look beyond it, they don't pay too much attention to it, or they're not that motivated to understand why it's so good, or they put too much emphasis on it. They're overly engaged with health-related things. So this is based on a question that's come up from one of the participants from the Kriya Yoga webinar that we did last month. Again, the download version of that, the 11-hour download where we go over the Kriya Techniques and beginning practices that you learn in initiation and so on, that's available at ashevillevedicastrology.com under the tab Learn Kriya Yoga. So if you want to know more about that, you can go there. Or you can go back in this channel, this Kriya Yoga channel, and there's a number of videos talking about the Kriya Yoga techniques, how to practice them and get the best results. So you have a number of options. But anyway, this is an important point because this participant in particular has some health issues, some debilitating health issues. And if you're already practicing Kriya Yoga, if you've already taken my classes or even classes of other Kriya Yoga teachers, you know that when one is unwell, one shouldn't necessarily do the Kriya Pranayama. And we also know that one has to be able to typically sit up straight, comfortable and poised, which is why asana exercise is so important to strengthen the back so that we can sit for long hours. Well, it doesn't have to be long hours, we don't want to push it. If you need to sit for long hours in meditation, you can. But just to be able to sit for 40 minutes to an hour, let's just start there. Okay. You need to have a healthy back, a healthy body to keep you upright. And you also need to be healthy enough that you don't fall asleep. And these are all issues that were brought up with this student. So first of all, let's check my notes here. I always say in all of my classes that yoga practice, spiritual practice, in my mind, Kriya Yoga practice, is not meant to heal you. A lot of people come to Kriya Yoga and meditation practice because they're unhealthy, they're unhappy, they want to get away from something in life, they want to be healed. And in my mind, I know in the previous video we talked about basketball, and I don't know why I keep going back to it, but it's the best example I can have. It's as if, when you're practicing Kriya Yoga or spirituality that's going to take you to the source, to deeper understanding, and you're coming to it to be healed, it's as if you want to go try out for a sports team, a professional sports team, or the NBA, and you've got a broken ankle and a broken arm, and you're thinking, I want to go try out for this sports team so that I can get better. Now, logic doesn't quite work. You actually have to be fit first before you get the full benefits of it, which is why in previous videos and in other classes I say, if you're unhealthy, you need to get healthy first. If you are unhappy, you need to figure out what's making you unhappy. That whole idea of needing to escape the world or escape from Maya, well, it's not that you want to escape from Maya or the world, it's that there are things causing you pain that you don't know how to deal with that you want to escape from. If you didn't have those things, you'd enjoy life. Think about when you're on vacation. Do you think, I want to get away from the world? No, you're probably thinking, the sun is beautiful, the ocean's nice, I'm enjoying a good meal, because these things aren't bothering you. So consider that when it comes to your approach to yoga practice, try not to come to it from a place of thinking that it's going to fix all of your mundane problems. And going back to this idea of joining a sports team, before you can even try out for a professional sports team, you probably have already spent years in training, hours every day in training to prepare yourself for that. This can be true for people who are also musicians, who want to be in professional music groups or orchestras. They don't just pick up a violin one day and say, I'm going to join this orchestra so I can learn how to play the violin. They spend years learning how to play the violin, then they try out for the orchestra. So keep this in mind. I would like to start seeing more people understanding that yoga, it can be very healing if you apply it appropriately, but when it comes to higher practices, you don't do those higher practices to heal yourself. You do those practices after you've already got a good baseline, you're already pretty calm and collected, everything flows pretty smoothly within your life for the most part. Things will always happen every now and then, and you can handle things, and you know how to keep it together, essentially. If you're seeking spirituality because you can't keep it together, well, again, my emphatic thought is figure out why you can't keep it together first, and then you want to approach a spiritual teacher, or you want to engage a really strong spiritual process. And most of us are impatient. You know, I know it sounds like I'm preaching and whatnot, and in a sense I am, but I understand. I mean, I was there too. I was unhappy. I was prone to depression and all these problems, and that's what partially drew me to spirituality too. But really, my underlying drive was that I wanted to wake up. I wanted to be clear, because I knew there was something, and I knew this world wasn't quite going to give it. But what I found is that now, these years of practice, I don't practice because I'm in pain, or I want to escape this world, or I want to get away from Maya. I practice because I personally enjoy it. I personally enjoy knowing that direct connection, knowing what I am. And then I interact with the world appropriately, as best I know how. You know, no one in this world is perfect, no matter how much of a pedestal you put them on. Whether it's your guru, your friend, your father, you know, the people that you idolize. I remember a good joke. The minister who married my wife and I, he told me one time, he said, if you ever want to lose your religion, make friends with your priest. So it's kind of funny how that works. But anyway, point being, back to spiritual and physical health. So the reason this question came up is because the person who asked it can't stay awake, or has difficulty staying up straight because of problems with their body. And he goes on to say that, you know, most people who are on the yogic path, that's not really an issue for them, because they're already into exercise and health and well-being. And he heard me say that if you're unwell, don't practice Kriya Pranayama. Or if you can't sit up straight, then, you know, meditation might not necessarily work as best it could. And what I need to bring up here is that we have to work within our specific limits. Some of us are blessed with good bodies. Some of us have problems from time to time. Some of us have difficulties with our bodies that are persistent. And, you know, if someone's handicapped, does that mean they can't practice Kriya Yoga? Meaning they can't sit up straight, or if they have health issues that don't allow them to stay awake or conscious. The example given here was, you know, if someone's in chemotherapy, these sorts of things, what do they do? And he asks, or he says, not to make myself feel good, but regardless of these limitations, my logic says that the only requirement for spiritual path is devotion, and if it exists, any limitation can be transcended. I think devotion is great and it's helpful, but devotion without knowledge is not. And that's why one of my favorite books is Vasista's Yoga. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's something like spiritual liberation. A bird can only fly with its two wings. And for spiritual liberation, those two wings are work and knowledge. Work is devotion, technique, practice, getting yourself jazzed up and clear, focused. Knowledge is being able to contemplate, self-inquiry, figure out, experience directly what this is. So we need both of them. If you can't practice inquiry, then yes, devotion is the way to go, hands down, because that's something. But you never want to say, oh, I can't do it. You always got to try a little bit. And that's the same thing with people who fall asleep. Usually, if you're a relatively healthy person, you fall asleep because you're not getting enough rest, because of food, because you haven't trained yourself to stay awake. So I don't want to make excuses for people who just can't, who aren't trying. But if there's a definite health situation going on that you just cannot stay awake, what do? You find the length of time that you can stay awake, and you set aside that time throughout the day, once or twice, 3, 4 times a day. And if it's only 5 minutes, then you take that time for 5 minutes to practice breath awareness, contemplation, prayer, or a technique that is applicable to you. If you start to fall asleep, you stop, you go about your day. Because you're not falling asleep throughout the day. You know, you're not like you have narcolepsy, although that might be a problem too. But point being, you do what you can. So if that's the issue, break it up. Don't say, well, so-and-so practices 2 hours, so I obviously shouldn't even try. Every little bit's going to work. So that's number one. Do what you can. Find how long can you stay awake. Set that time. Do it for that amount of time, multiple times throughout the day. Who knows? If you did 6 sittings of 10 minutes a day, well, that's 60 minutes, which is 30 minutes longer than the person who only meditates for a half hour at the same time every day. So keep this in mind. You want to acknowledge your current state of health, but you don't want to let it overly... You want to do what you can. That's the key. Now, let's say someone is handicapped, or as this person writes. But as an example, what about a handicapped person? Not blind, but more so those who can't maintain proper straight postures, either in Shavasana or other standing, sitting postures. Can they transcend this limitation in this lifetime? Are they supposed to just suffer their karma as part of their spiritual growth? The answer is no. And again, we want to make sure that we're not making excuses for people who just don't feel like taking the time to exercise so that they can sit up straight. I remember when I first began meditating, I was really out of shape, and it actually hurt my back after about 40 minutes of meditation. And when I tried to sit for 2 hours, it was unbearable. So I had to, over the years, work on strengthening my back, my health, so that I could do it. Now I can sit for 2, 3, 4 hours, no problem, because I exercise enough to make that strong. So again, we're not making excuses for people who just aren't motivated. But again, a serious health issue that doesn't allow you to sit up straight, or these sorts of things. Well, one of the things that comes up often in other spiritual texts, like say, for example, if someone's doing a particular ceremony, in mythological context. Well, they often say, if you can't do something physically, do it in your mind. So let's imagine you can't sit up straight, or you have to sit in a certain position, or there's a position that you're in that just seems kind of weird for meditation. It doesn't matter. If that's your position, close your eyes, and now in your mind, imagine that you are sitting up straight. Imagine what it would feel like if you were sitting up straight. And from that imagined position, go through the procedures, go through the practice. So we have to remember that if we absolutely cannot do the ideal, we can still do it in our mind, okay, as long as we are mentally and psychologically healthy. And I've done this before when I've gone through illnesses where there was no way and I was going to sit up. There was no way I could get in the proper posture. But what did I do is I was laying there. I had a little timer that I used to keep myself awake. And I would set it for like every 4 minutes. So it would go off every 4 minutes. So I knew that if I started to drift after 4 minutes, it would ding and I'd wake back up if I was asleep, or it'd remind me to stay on task, and I'd hit it again until my time was done. And during that time, even though I was laying down or on my side, in my mind I was sitting up straight. I was imagining what would it feel like if I could sit up straight, as I was practicing Kriya Pranayama, as I was practicing mantra meditation, Yoni Mudra, self-inquiry, keeping my awareness clear and strong. So it is important in my mind to focus on health and well-being. And the more we do practice, the healthier we generally get. But I don't feel one should seek out the higher spiritual practices hoping that it's going to heal them or make their life better. They need to figure out what is going on in their life that is preventing them from being healthy and happy. Because once you get there, you have a much better foundation, and take care of those things. But if someone is seriously ill, they have difficulty staying awake, they need to find the way to work it for them so that they can stay awake, even if it's just for a little bit, sporadic throughout different periods of time. If the body itself is such that it's crippled or has such a weakness that it cannot sit up straight, that it cannot stay in an upright posture, well, then find the posture you can stay in, but in your mind, sit up straight. Meaning visualize it, feel it as though that was actually happening. In your mind, go through all the practices. It'll have the same effect. It's not ideal, but as we see in the world, we have to work with what we've got, not with the way we wish it would be. Okay, and this is going to apply to people across the board, so it's not just going to be for health-related things, because a lot of people think, well, I'm just not going to do a particular practice because I can't do it this way, or because I have this particular handicap, or whatever it might be. You want to be self-honest, and if you need to do something to improve your health and you can, do it. If it's such that you need to adjust and adapt, do it. If you need devotion, do it. It doesn't matter. You just have to do what you can, remembering that you don't want to just buckle to the shortcomings that you perceive your body to have. Remember, you can do it in your mind. Now, some other things. I've talked about this in other videos, but I remember reading a book where Yogananda talked about health and healing, and he said that you want to get so clear that you are healthy, even if your body tells you otherwise. In your mind and your consciousness, you want to affirm and know and feel that you are healthy, that you are well, even if your body is otherwise, because that will help you to see opportunities that can help make you healthier. It may be that a karma or a unconscious conditioning for ill health is so strong that you are not able to overcome it in this lifetime. You may die from it. But what Yogananda had said was, it doesn't matter. As long as you hold that knowing of health and well-being, even if you die from the illness, that helps to burn out that karma, so that when you remanifest next time, if you choose to, you won't have to start over again. It's when you don't work on that and you carry that sense of unhappiness and unhealth into death that it comes back again the next time, because you haven't dealt with it. The things that you have to deal with next time are the things that you haven't dealt with this time, which is why that whole idea of dying to transcend, forget it. If you haven't transcended before you're done, you're just going to come back and start where you left off, which is okay. That's the way it works. So with this health and understanding, you want to be realistic, you don't want to be hard on yourself, and you want to be as honest with yourself as possible. But you also always want to acknowledge, what is it to be healthy? Feel that in your mind, feel that in your consciousness. And the interesting thing that you'll find as you practice meditation and Kriya practice, that as you affirm health and feel well-being inside, even though your body is not responding the way you want it to, it's all those little thoughts, all those little feelings that come up, like maybe you contemplate, I'm healthy, I'm well, but deep down inside you feel a sense of fear. So now you have to figure out, what is that fear? Where does it come from? Work through it, either with a counselor, an appropriate body worker who knows what they're doing, that's important, or acknowledging it and exploring it yourself if you have that capacity. Because as you affirm, I am self-realized, I am awake, I am healthy, it's all those little things that come up and say, no you're not, or make you feel like there's an obstacle there. Those are little things that you get out of your way, which is why it's so important to contemplate, because they will share with you, they will show you bright as day what's getting in your way. So it's not that you ignore them, you use them. And that is a very important part of Kriya Yoga practice that isn't often discussed. But we are going to go over it in that Yoga Sutras webinar, the online webinar in October and December. Because too many people are focused on technique and too many people are focused on devotion. And while those are a part of the whole practice, you actually have to do inner work. That's the inner work that we're meant to do. So I hope this is helpful. And there's probably a lot more that could be said about this. But again, you can go back and find other videos where I've talked about health and well-being, or you can even get the book A Course in Tranquility. There's a whole chapter on that where I talk about health and well-being. And these are just my thoughts and my theoretical philosophy that seems to work for me. It's worked for other people too, at least from the feedback I've gotten. But keep in mind, we all have our own path to walk. So this is not the end of the matter. These are just my thoughts and perceptions based on walking this path so far. So thank you very much, and we've got one more video before we conclude for 2014, and that will be on how to be a Satya Yuga individual, going along with the idea of the yugas, the time cycle. Satya Yuga is the age of enlightenment. Currently we're in the second age. We just left the dark ages about 300–400 years ago. So thank you. We'll be in touch soon.